Hi, you guys. It's Emily, Kidlit Book Love. I'm here to talk to you about all of my fantastic reads for the month of October 2015. There are quite a few. As you know, you can read a lot more children's literature than adult literature in the same month because the books are shorter and I read a lot. So a lot of these I did personal in detail reviews on, so I'll whiz through those and then I'll talk a little bit more about the ones that I didn't. This I did a review for. These are Neil Gaiman's his box set of his three very famous books, Fortunately the Milk, Coraline, and the Graveyard Book. This is my very favorite, Coraline. I did do a detailed review on these, so you can see that on my YouTube channel. And what I love about his books is that in this box set, each one is for a different sort of age range. The Graveyard Book definitely for adults or high schoolers, Coraline maybe middle school, and then Fortunately the Milk for little kids. But these are illustrated by Chris Riddell, and he has sort of a Tim Burton-y illustration style, which is why I love that he did that for Neil Gaiman's book. So you can see my review. I loved all of the books except the Graveyard Book, so wasn't fond of that one at all, but you can see my review for more information about that. Speaking of Chris Riddell, who illustrated these books, Chris Riddell did his own books, which I purchased one and read. And this is Autoalign and the Yellow Cat, and he did this series of books about this little girl named Autoalign who lives home. Well, it seems like she's alone, and her parents are always traveling. And there's sort of this creature that looks like it's right out of the Addams Family with the hair over it, takes care of her and is her friend. And I purchased this to read, but I mostly ended up liking it for the illustrations because I think Chris Riddell is a brilliant artist. And so it was a fun read. As far as the book itself, I don't believe Chris Riddell is meant to be a children's author. I think he's meant to be an illustrator. That's his key talent, skill, and passion. I give him kudos for attempting to write a children's book or children's series. I felt like he needs some training and some work in how to write for children. I felt the plot was incredibly slow. There wasn't much plot. Too many descriptions of scenes of just eating, talking. Here we have, for breakfast this morning, Autoline had strawberry bagels and apple juice. Mr. Monroe had porridge and hot chocolate. There are lots of scenes like that. I feel like there are a lot of things in there that didn't have a lot of purpose. Too slow for me. Definitely, I felt I just would only buy it for the art. I wouldn't recommend it. And there's a lot of, reading. He does these posters and newspaper articles and things like that. So again, so I probably wouldn't recommend it. And okay, I did read also the entire Paddington Bear first three books in this box set. A Bear Called Paddington, more about Paddington and Paddington Helps Out. I did a full review of these on my YouTube channel. Love Paddington Bear. Adorable, sweet, pure, funny, laugh out loud. They're little novels. I mean, they're super cute. They're not just picture books. So check out my review, and I think any age will like Paddington Bear for sure. And I read this book, The King of the Golden River, which is a little tiny sort of a novel. This version was done in 1974. And it was actually written originally in 1889. So it sort of has this, it's about three brothers who live on this fertile land. And two of the brothers are kind of bad and evil and greedy. And one brother is pure and kind and sweet and never asks for anything and is abused by the other brothers. And sort of there's this opportunity for sort of a spell where if they do the right thing, they won't lose their land. If they do the wrong thing, their river will flood and wipe out all of the soil. So it was a very interesting kind of a fairy tale. I mean, I would read it again. It was good. It was good. It was just different. So more adult theme to me, even though it's supposed to be a children's story. So. Okay, I read Frances Hodgson Burnett. I read her, as we know, she did The Secret Garden, but she did this book called The Land of the Blue Flower. And I found this in a vintage bookstore, and it is an original first printing. I didn't know much of her other work other than her famous one. It was done in 1909. And it's just a very short tale about sort of a King Arthur, Merlin kind of a thing. There's a young prince who's raised by this wise sage, and who prepares him for these wonderful lessons on how to be a king. And once he becomes an adult, he gets released to the society to become the king. And all these wonderful tales of moral. There's a lot of morals in here. I really like it. A lot of it is about reap what you sow. A lot of law of attraction kind of things. It made me think of. I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was very well written and very lovely. And the little cripple lived near the sun and the stars, in the castle on the mountain crag, until he grew strong and straight. Then he was the king's chief gardener. The boy who was clever was made captain of his band, which became the king's own guard and never left him. And the gloom of King Mordred's land was forever forgotten, because it was known throughout all the world as the land of the blue flower. So basically the king, when he gets released to the people, there's a lot of bad and evil and crime. So he makes it a law that everyone has to plant a blue flower, and the act of the gardening, and then the reminder as the flowers bloom, is to remind them of, good, pure acts and things like that. So very lovely story, beautifully written. I mean, I was very surprised. I had never read any of her other work, so I really recommend this if you can find a copy. I mean, this was luck. I found it, The Land of the Blue Flower. Okay, I did read the Raggedy Ann books. You can find a separate review of that on my page. Well, not all of them. I read a couple of them. This is the first one from 1918. This is an original printing from P.F. Volland Company. This is Marcella. This was one based on his daughter's life, his daughter who passed away in 1915 from a vaccination. I recommend the Raggedy Ann books to anybody. They are beautiful, touching. It's one of those kinds of stories where if you kind of are down or gloomy or want to be cheered up, you can curl up and read it. It really made me happy, and there's a good amount of reading in it. There are full pages of text, sometimes double. And Johnny Gurrell is a brilliant artist, so see my reviews on the Raggedy Ann books. There's one other I read that I don't have here, which is the Wishing Pebble book as well, which I talked about in my review. And I did read all three of there are four Pender Wax books, which I did a review on. These are the first two, and you can find one review I did on my page here. On the first two, I just finished this one, the Pender Wax at Point Muette, and there is a fourth one, the Pender Wax in Spring, which I have not read yet, and I can't wait. I love the Pender Wax. There are novels, definitely. There's no illustrations, full novels, fat books. I would say older, late middle school, all the way to adult. I mean, I love these books. It was hard to put them down. They're sweet and charming and wonderful morals, and the characters are distinctive. So see my review on the Pender Wax books. I can't recommend them enough. I will do a separate review on this new one, which I just finished. Okay, October. What else did I read? I read this one, which I did a review on, The Family Under the Bridge by Natalie Savage Carlson. This was a Newbery Award-winning follow-up runner-up book. Or is it a gold, silver star? And it was a beautiful story about a homeless person who finds hope again by taking care of homeless children, and who learns to love and take responsibility. And I absolutely thought it was precious and easy to read, and in a way that would just flows. Brilliant writing. She is a very good writer, and I did do a review of this, so you can learn more from my review. I did read both these two Betsy Tacy books. These were written in the 1940s. Betsy and Tacy Go Over the Big Hill, and Betsy Tacy and Tib. Oh my, I love the Betsy Tacy books. They are charming and lovely and just precious. So well written, and even for an adult, and they have beautiful drawings, wonderful descriptions of the time period of the 40s, the homes, the clothing, the girls. It's about these three friends who go on these sort of adventures and their trials and tribulations of living during that time. And they look, in the book, they're described exactly like these three girls, very distinctive and different, each of them. I can't wait to read the rest. They're written by Maud Hart Lovelace. I did do a review of these, so you can see that on my channel. For October, I read this little book, Tales for Little People. It was written in the late 1800s. I just found this on eBay for a few dollars, and sometimes I do buy vintage children's books, just random ones that are really a good deal, just to see, get a taste of Victorian literature. And it had, a few random stories, Baby Manly, some poems. It's a very small book. But, it just amazes me when they call this a picture book for little children. It just amazes me. It reminds me of during the Victorian era how brilliant kids must have been because they didn't have video games and TV. They did nothing probably but read and learn and read and learn. And they can read, a lot of this reads like, Dickens, like adult literature. And it wasn't, I didn't love it. It was all right. It had been written in and drawn on, and it was more damage than I thought it was. But it was only $2, so I guess I can't complain. So, if you're familiar with the Boxcar Children, I read 3 Boxcar Children's books. I had never read them. The first one here, done in a new printing, the Boxcar Children. I read the second one, which is Surprise Island, and this is a vintage one, an old one from the 80s, Thanksgiving special. So I did do a review of the Boxcar Children. I haven't posted it yet. I'll post it soon. And I love the first one. The vintage one, not so much. I wonder if it was by a different writer. I don't know. The second one of the modern reprint, pretty good. But the first one was honestly the best. But I will write more about that and talk more about that later. I read my very first American Girl book. Oh, wow. I loved it. This one is Meet Kit. She's from the 1930s. And it's all about her experience living in the Great Depression. And I had never read any American Girl books, and they have these beautiful sort of oil paintings in them. And what I like is in the back it has a nonfiction section all about life in the 1930s. It talked about Shirley Temple and the Great Depression, and I loved it. I thought the prose was beautiful. It was really well written, just from Kit's perspective in the Great Depression. Engaging. I read it in 40 minutes or 30 minutes. Very nice story. And yes, I know it's meant for younger girls, but I loved it. I really loved it. And I'm going to purchase definitely more of the American Girl books. And I want to talk about 3 little children's chapter books that I read that I did not do reviews on. So I'm going to talk about them to you here, and here they are. The first is Lovely, the Magical Animal Adoption Agency, Book 1, Clovers Luck, by Callie George. This is brand new. It was produced by Disney Publishing Company, so it wouldn't surprise me if they make it into a show or a movie. I really enjoyed it quite a bit. It's about a little girl named Clover who lives near the woods, and she wanders into the woods and comes across this sort of fantasy cottage, and it's full of these interesting and creatures and little miniature ponies and unicorns and dragon eggs and little tiny just creatures that you wouldn't see elsewhere. And there's a man there that sort of recruits her to be an apprentice to take care of and find special homes for the animals. And not just homes in regular houses like the homes of princesses and things like that. It does have very nice black and white illustrations. It was definitely a cute book, very beautiful fantasy descriptions and settings, cute phrases. I really enjoyed it. I'll definitely read the second book, which is not out yet, which is called, I think, The Enchanted Egg or something like that. It should be out soon. I really enjoyed it. It says ages 7 and up. I think any age that can read well can read these. And I love the names she uses for the creatures, Moondrop, and all kinds of just charming, lovely names for all of the animals. So I really liked this a great deal. This one, not so much. This was Misty in Runaway Pony, from a take on Marguerite Henry's Misty of Chincoteague books, like the original Misty book, horse books you might remember from the 70s, which is when I read them growing up, which, of course, they were written even well before that. This is, it's all about, again, these little children that live on an island, and they're taking care, different tales with ponies. This one was very slow, not intriguing, not much plot. Dull and boring. I believe for an older person who likes kid lit, a young child that read it, that's maybe in, 4th, 5th, 6th grade, if they can read that well, probably wouldn't notice there's anything lacking, but But if you have someone who loves horses and animals and they're not ready, not ready for the big Misty books, which are more difficult reading, I guess I could recommend this for sure, but not for an adult kidlit reader, probably. On the contrary, there's one that I absolutely loved out of all three the most for any adult or anybody. It's The Mysteries of Maisie Hitchins, and this one is The Case of the Stolen Sixpence, Book 1 by Holly Webb, a UK author, and some of these are available now in the US, some are being released soon in the US, and I'm absolutely in love with this book. It was so good. I read it in a couple of hours straight, and it has really cute illustrations. It's about a little girl that lives in London in a boarding house with her grandmother, and she's sort of enthralled with like the kind of Sherlock Holmes things, enthralled with some famous detectives, and she wants to become a detective, and she noticed some sort of mishaps and things happening around her area in the boarding house and around the town, and so she starts investigating, and it's so super cute, and the way she writes it is just brilliant. I mean, it's just crafty and clever, and the words roll right through your mind and you just can't stop reading, and it was intriguing enough for an adult, I think. Holly Webb, kudos to you. I absolutely love this book, and I did purchase a few others. One I had to get from the UK because I couldn't find it here, but I can't wait to read those, so you should like them as well. And we're about done here. If you're familiar with Joan Walsh England, the author and illustrator and artist, she did, well, here's one of her bigger books, a little book of poems and prayers, which I read, by Joan Walsh England. And she did these sort of, in the 60s and 70s, these figurines of these beautiful, precious children. And she made figurines, and there's some books, which I have, and other art, and these collectible plates you can hang on the wall, which my mom had some of the figurines and the plates. But this book I got actually for free. It's just a nice little book of prayers and poems with some of the children in it. This is actually one of those wood board books, so they're fat, heavy pages. But mostly for Joan Walsh England, what I wanted to recommend that I read are 3 of her little tiny books here. And I have about 10 or 11 of these, but these are actually really cute, sweet books, kind of read like Hallmark cards, and I'll show you. But I purchased them mostly, this is the springtime one, I purchased them because they're vintage and I love vintage, but because of the illustrations. So some are color, some are black and white. She's a beautiful artist, I mean, and every page has a sweet little message, about friendship or love or important values and things in life. This one is Love is a Special Way of Feeling, here, and again, just a really nice story about treasuring people you love, and I just love the very precious art in these books. And my mom actually had a few of the figurines that, when I first saw these books on eBay, I purchased them, and I thought, wow, these look really familiar, the children. And then I realized that my mom passed away. I got a lot of her belongings, but I have some figurines I realized in my display room that are from Joan Walsh England, and I didn't even know it until I got the book. So this one is Childhood is a Special Time of Innocence, and if you go to eBay, type in Joan Walsh England, you can probably find some of these little books. They're just little tiny, see how they are next to my hand, little tiny books. These were in excellent condition, the ones that I found. So 2 left. I read The Princess and Kerdi, the follow-up to The Princess and the Goblin, and I did a review on The Princess and the Goblin and The Princess and Kerdi on my page, so you can read that. This is an early 1900s copy, an original printing, fantasy, gothic literature. Difficult read, not meant for children. I did like it a great deal, but not nearly as much as The Princess and the Goblin, which you can hear about when you watch my other review. And finally, we've come to the end. I purchased, I know I did it, a Pinkalicious book. And I don't generally buy little children's picture books, especially these cheap $2 ones, but I love pink and I love Christmas, so I bought it just for the art and read through it and looked at the photo and looked at the drawings. And I really enjoyed, mostly, again, the illustrations. This is kind of a retro look to it, and it was a very cute story about wanting a pink Christmas tree. There are lots of Pinkalicious books out there, so I just bought this because I just liked it and just for the heck of it. So that's it for my reads for October 2015. I know it's a lot, but I read quickly and I love children's literature. You will not believe the haul that I just came up with yesterday for my November haul, and because it's the first today, so I will be listing that in a couple of days. Thanks for watching. Appreciate your support.